Okay, hello and welcome to Evening with the Experts. The topic today is importance of collaboration with families and young children's adults. I'm super excited for this conversation, especially during this time of season with November and December and all the holidays. Tonight we have Megan Handshue from Black Hills Special Services Cooperative, a family service specialist and early childhood expert, and Ashleigh Young from here at ECC. She is our family service specialist in-house. I'm really excited for you guys to hear their conversation. If you haven't logged on to any of these events, this is kind of a rundown of what happens. So you guys are going to get a chance to meet the experts, hear why we've identified them as experts. We're going to identify the problem. We're going to let the experts take it from there. Then there's time for pre-submitted questions and then any other thoughts or questions that come up. We do have you have your mics muted, but if you want to drop anything in the chat or hop off of mute and you want to add or ask questions, please feel free to do so. Okay, without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Megan to have her introduce herself.
Hey everybody, I'm Megan Handshue. I wear a couple different hats at Black Hills Special Services. So if you know the South Dakota Family Engagement Center, that's one of them, and that's part of Community Family Services also. And so I'm here because family engagement is the work I do and work on. And so that allows me to be an expert. As my bio says, I've had an in-home preschool, expanded to group home, and then also did some large scale directing also, and a little bit of everything. This is a little bit old, but I have a 16-year-old now, and so I spend a lot of time working through 16-year-old things. Over to you, Ashleigh.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashleigh Young. I am the Family Outreach Specialist with Early Childhood Connections. In the past, I have worked with a variety of families from various different demographics, from families in crisis and poverty to even elderly, those with disabilities, and even individuals in recovery. So I have a pretty strong passion in connecting with people and providing the support that they might need to help navigate life's challenges because we know that not everybody has the same social support network, and some people just need a little extra help. As for my background, I have a degree in psychology and sociology. I graduated here in the Hills from the Black State Hills University, and most of my adult career has been working with those families and advocating for, different community services, resources, and just helping support people through every walk of life. Um, Outside of my professional life, I do have two kiddos, a 4-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy. So I'm definitely no stranger to the challenges and barriers of family life. Um, it comes with all its own barriers that are unique, and, having somebody in your corner that understands those challenges and is familiar with the community to help navigate those can oftentimes be, the helping hand that we need to get a step forward. Beyond that, I really enjoy gardening, crocheting, and traveling. So that is about me.
Love it. Thank you, ladies, for those intros. So, as you heard, both of them have a very passionate approach to involving parents and young children's adults. And tonight we're going to talk about that is something that just truly shapes everything we do in early childhood, and that is the connection that we make. So collaboration isn't just about sending those messages, checking in at pickup and drop off. It's about those relationships we form with not only the children, but the children's caregivers too. So when families, teachers, and caregivers come together with that shared purpose, children can feel it, right? They understand, oh, we're working all together. My mom likes my teacher. Like, that's a good feeling for that child. They can see that they care about the child together. So those everyday moments, those quick chats at the door, celebrating milestones together, like the yay, we finally pooped in the potty, like those are huge deals. So navigating those challenges together is when partnership is built. When families feel heard, respected, and included, they're not just bystanders, they're partners in the process. And the children thrive when that happens. Now, this takes work. It means we have to slow down, carve out time. We have to be able to listen with intent. We have to get curious instead of making those assumptions, which is really hard because we all have biases, right? But we have to find a way to honor every family at whatever step they're at in their journey. So, honoring their diversity, their unique historical, cultural, and all of those strengths, and making space for those voices to be a part of the classroom and the community. So we're going to hear from our experts tonight, and they're going to explore what genuine partnership looks like in early learning, how you guys can take some principles, put them into practice, make those connections, celebrate with families, and just build a sense of shared care around the children in your care. So I invite you to open up your mind, approach this with a growth mindset, and be ready to take some practices back with you. Okay, we are going to turn it over to the first expert, which is Ashleigh.
All right. So as Rose had mentioned, children thrive when their adults are connected. So with that, let's talk about why connection and collaboration is so important with building these connections and partnerships. Ultimately, we know that research consistently shows that children do better when the adults in their lives, both at home, in school, and across the different systems of care, communicate and work together. Regardless if it's, again, at home, if it's with their pediatricians and doctors, or with their educators. That shared understanding that occurs when adults are able to effectively communicate helps not only the adults understand those goals that we're working towards, but it helps children see that everyone within their network is on the same team and working towards those shared goals. This creates a sense of safety and security, and as well as community that's essential for healthy development. So we've talked about why and kind of the basics that collaboration takes work, right? It's about building a shared understanding and having that investment in the same goals. So how does this happen? First, or how does it impact? First, we see the impact because children themselves benefit directly. At the basis that communication is essential for their social emotional development. When children see the adults in their network modeling what collaboration, respect, and communication look like, they learn how to be more empathetic. They learn what collaboration and cooperation is, and they begin to develop those essential skills for conflict resolution as well. This ultimately leads to improved behavior and better self-regulation because the enforcement of those consistent expectations between home and school helps children regulate their emotions and behaviors more effectively. When they know that what is expected at home is also going to be enforced in the classroom and vice versa, those expectations are ultimately more consistent and have better build a better sense of expectation within the kids. It also promotes school readiness and confidence in their learning. Children who consistently experience that stable and coordinated support are more confident in their own learning abilities and receive specific individualized support where they need it. If a teacher is able to express that maybe a child needs a little extra support with their literacy, that is a good flag for the parents to be able to work additionally with them on that at home, and then vice versa. And then ultimately, with more effective collaboration, again, children learn what those healthy relationships look like and what it takes through the adults' interactions. They learn those essential communication skills and social skills like working together, how to listen effectively, as well as how to advocate and express their needs. So ultimately, it helps the whole child development be more successful. Not only do we see the success within the kids individually, but we also see better success at home. First and foremost, families feel more supported when there's a better sense of collaboration across those systems of care. There oftentimes, again, families come from support systems that are oftentimes limited or unhealthy, and they don't have, the um, super involved aunts and uncles or grandparents that are able to help kind of fill in those gaps and model what good, effective relationships between adults look like. And then we also have a stronger understanding of what those mutual goals are, just like we had talked about with the literacy component. When families are more supported and the relationship is collaborative, we're able to identify each child's individual strengths and needs. So that way we can cater their support best to the whole child and kind of anticipate how the home might be able to help support that child. And then finally, families are better able to understand and support their child's development. Oftentimes, the educators are the first line of defense and support for child development, especially for families that may not have the strongest background or understand the science between child development. Our educators are, again, the frontline supports on that to be able to offer guidance and assistance to families to help understand what's needed to support their specific child's growth and development. And then last but certainly not least, we see more success within the classrooms. What that typically looks like is when there's a more efficient and effective partnership between home and school, there's a better understanding of the home dynamic that ultimately leads to better support. When an educator is aware of and understands what barriers that family might be navigating, it can offer some valuable insight into that child. For example, if you have a child that consistently comes to school and is not engaged or frequently falls asleep, that might be a really good indicator that that family lacks some home security, or might be frequently on the move and just doesn't have a stable evening schedule or place, or home. It's also a good indicator in those behavioral components as well. A child that is, extra tired or is not having their basic needs met at home for whatever reason is going to oftentimes exhibit higher rates of behaviors. With that shared understanding of the home dynamic, we can also take into consideration that learning as a whole is not a one-size-fits-all model, which allows us to better individualize it to each child. Maybe this family needs a little extra support with housing and food security for that child's needs to be met, where another child might just need some extra, as we had talked about, literacy support. With that shared understanding of mutual goals, again, we can better identify each child's individual strength and best support the whole child between the classroom and home. That improved consistency promotes overall success. Then ultimately, when those collaborations are more efficient and effective, educators feel more fulfilled because you're effectively addressing any issues and seeing that support transcend beyond the classroom, home, and that whole child.
Thank you, Ashleigh. Ashleigh has shared a resource that she finds really beneficial, and that'll be sent out in the follow-up email as well as dropped in the chat. It's from NACCE, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, which if you do not know about, please feel free to email Megan or I after this because we are your local reps, so we can answer questions and get you hooked up. Thank you, Ashleigh. Let's move on to Megan.
Great. So families are children's first teachers. I think that we tend to hear this quite a bit, and I came across some data a number of years ago that talked about not every parent is comfortable in schools or in learning environments and in childcare centers, that there's maybe they have baggage or maybe they had a horrible experience. And so for them, that teacher role immediately might strike fear in them, or they don't feel like the teacher, they feel like that's somebody else's work. And so I've recently also came across a reframe thinking of it as parents or families are a child's first influence. And when we look at things from an influence perspective, it can completely change the script for us and for families also. It might mean that there's actually more pressure for families if they, like, not every family understands that a screen and that their time, if they're playing, let's say, like a violent game in front of their child, they might not understand the connection between that violent game and maybe some more aggressive behaviors that that child has. So when we start to reframe it as influence, that's something that I think can be a little bit more visible and a little bit more empowering. You probably heard a story about a little girl. Her parent wanted to raise her mother wanted to raise her very like body positive. But she never saw that every time she was in the mirror, that mother, she was like checking out her stomach and sucking it in and looking at that. And then one day she noticed that her daughter was also doing the same. And that was a big aha for that parent in that moment of everything I do, they see. And so oftentimes we understand that as providers and as educators, but not every parent has had that information yet. So then as providers and educators, we get to come and partner with them in those first experiences and that influence outside of the home too. So some deeper core concepts this is rooted in is every family has strengths and stories, and they really do. They sometimes they can be hidden, or we've touched a little bit about cultural and backgrounds and differences. It just comes from a different angle sometimes, and at the end of the day, the family knows their children best. They notice every little thing, the words, the routines, and the quirks that make them who they are. And those are strengths for that family and things they want to celebrate. The second concept is that learning happens through routines, songs, language, and traditions. And we know that thanks to brain science, we do now know that, learning isn't necessarily this formal process. It really happens in the everyday, especially with an early childhood. And so that's powerful for us also, but then helping parents gain access to that knowledge is really empowering for them in that place too. And the last piece here, trust grows when providers listen before advising. I talked a little bit about, I wish I had some hard numbers for you about parents coming in with like automatic distrust, or maybe their child also has been, they've had to move different childcare settings frequently. If we listen as providers from a partnership angle, and if we listen before judging, if we get curious about those behaviors, then that can really move it from a frame of mindset from that parent and me provider to like us versus them to we're doing this together. And I wonder why they're always coming in late. I wonder why why that child is, I don't know, throwing rocks at your dog if you have a pet dog, right? When maybe that's something that they're doing in their own home. And so hard conversations are a frequent thing in our world that we live in. And if we approach that with a frame of curiosity and doing this together, it can really be impactful.
Thank you, Megan. And I always like to mention, I attended a Castle webinar, and this amazing speaker talked about the best coaches, which you are a coach for, when you're an early childhood teacher, you're not only coaching the children, but you're coaching sometimes the family, like Ashleigh and Megan have said, on some of the early childhood development and like what they do impacts. But what he had said, the best coaches they're good listeners, They're non-judgmental and they're non-fixers. So if you just approach sometimes with just a listening ear, you're going to see more beautiful things happen. Okay, we're going to pop over to Ashleigh.
Okay, so the next principle that we're going to talk about is the concept that bridging requires a deeper level of understanding of the barriers that impact our families. Oftentimes, the barriers to collaboration and effective partnerships are not easily to be seen. But when we can approach our relationships with others with empathy and compassion, just as Megan had said previously, we're able to foster those better outcomes. The fact is that collaboration isn't always easy. Families often face barriers that either might limit their participation, might cause misunderstandings that weaken that bridge between home and school or other systems, and require us as professionals to kind of do some of that harder work to better understand and bridge those barriers. So, let's first talk about how we can better understand the barriers. So, oftentimes, again, families face barriers that hinder their engagement or involvement. It's oftentimes easy to assume that lack of a parent or a guardian's involvement translates as a lack of interest in their child's educational journey. But oftentimes, the barriers that a family is facing aren't always immediately visible. There are a couple types of barriers that we need to be more aware of when working with families. The first ones are called systemic barriers, which are these external challenges that exist beyond a family's control that create limitations for families. You can think of systemic barriers as things like housing insecurities, transportation insecurities, food insecurities, oftentimes symptoms of families who are living in poverty or crisis. What these typically present as is a reduced capacity to engage. Or there might be other external reasons, such as hefty work demands or, packed schedules. Maybe there's some older siblings in sports that conflict with being able to attend a family engagement night at this particular child's school. So conflicting schedules can often create a reduced capacity. It's important to remember that these challenges, again, don't equate to a lack of commitment or interest, but they rather reflect real life obstacles that require our understanding and flexibility to navigate. Beyond the systemic barriers, we also have emotional barriers, which are those more internal or relational challenges that affect effective partnerships. These are things like a family or a parent's fear of judgment that can potentially reduce that connection between them and the other adults in that child's life. For example, a parent might feel like they're being perceived as failing or their child is being targeted when an educator talks to them about a behavior that the child is experiencing. It's very easy as a parent to get naturally defensive over our kids, right? So when an educator addresses us about, so and so had a pretty rough day at school today, bullying another child, or wasn't the best friend, again, that can feel very targeted on us as a parent and even as our kids. So we get a little defensive. Um, Emotional barriers can also stem from cultural disconnect that oftentimes leads to misunderstandings. A difference of values, difference of priorities or preferences, and even like home dynamics can make families feel judged. So maybe their priority at home is not, um, you know, helping their child with their homework, but rather ensuring that the child has a safe place to sleep, has their next meal, or even just that they're spending time together, where the educator might see, oh, this family member didn't, complete this child's homework with them. They just don't care about the child's academic success. That's not always the case. So those are a couple of the barriers that we can be a little bit more mindful of. Now, when it comes to addressing those barriers or continuing to build that gap, first and foremost, empathy and compassion are required in order to build that trust. When families feel valued and heard, that communication becomes easier. So having empathy allows us to listen without judgment, while compassion is the catalyst that motivates us to take supportive action. Whether that's identifying that this parent just needs a safe place to vent and feel heard, or this family truly needs some external resources to help them be successful and help their child be successful. When we listen empathetically and show that compassion, trust is ultimately established and families are able to be more consistent. They experience what kindness looks like. They trust that educators follow through on their promises. And they develop this genuine belief that providers are on their team. And then finally, we see the building of those stronger partnerships. And it doesn't have to be a huge change or, you don't have to adapt your entire teaching style around them. Even small steps can help build better bridges to these partner steps or these partnerships. Just being simply intentional about the work that you're doing, how you talk to a family member, and showing up for them consistently can help build a stronger bridge. So, what that might look like is engaging with families intentionally. This can be done through those warm greetings that Rose talked about, through checking in on them about their day, or even acknowledging efforts. Checking in with them when you know a family has gone through, a change or a situation can also help build that sense of acknowledgement. Next, it's important to be flexible when you and problem solve together. This can look like something as simple as offering different methods of communication. Me personally, I am not a phone call person, so under no situation should you ever give me a call if you want an effective, conversation. I'm much more confident and responsive through text messages. So knowing that about a family can help build better communication as well. And then always ask before assuming. You should always seek to better understand a situation before drawing conclusions. Again, like Megan had talked about in the previous principle, when we better approach families with compassion, this is where you see that movement from why didn't this family do this to what might be making it difficult or what might the family be going through that prevents this. That simple shift in mindset allows us to meet families where they're at and respond with respect. That is the key catalyst to building those genuine partnerships. And then on this next slide here, we can see what's referred to as the iron triangle. This concept establishes that there are three pillars for quality care and education. These are full enrollment, full fee collection, and revenues that cover per child costs. At a basis, and Megan's going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but we know that each pillar matters, right? For this cycle to be effective, you have to have all three areas at least balanced. Otherwise, the whole system feels the strain. Full enrollment ensures that your program receives steady income. That fee collection helps ensure that our operations are running smoothly. And then covering the per child cost allows you to pay the fair wages and provide quality materials in the program. Now, what we know is that just like families oftentimes face barriers, programs feel it as well. Low subsidy rates, staffing shortages, inconsistent attendance. These are all different things that help that put that strain on this system. So recognizing these help us better respond with empathy and problem solving instead of this blame and shame game. So again, the goal isn't to be perfect, right? It's about balance. When you have open communication with families, you enforce consistent policies, and you advocate for true cost funding, all of these help better sustain the systems while also supporting quality relationships and consistent care for children.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pop over to Megan for the next principle.
So, with shared power and family engagement, the core belief of family engagement is that we do things with families, not for families. Um, I like to think of family engagement as empowerment and also liken it to thinking of birthday candles. Imagining somebody's older than 1 years old, maybe 10 years old, or maybe 50 years old. Um, think of it like shared power is like that birthday candle, right? You take one and then you pass it on to the next. And the more you pass it on to those candles, the brighter the room gets. With that thinking, we know that power is not a limited resource then. Collaboration strengthens everybody. It strengthens to be stronger, more resilient, and then it creates a ripple effect of a positive cycle that encourages others to pass on the goodwill and their learning. Next slide. So with that, let me get to my next slide too. When we think of family goals and children's learning and behavior supports, I think that term goal can be really intimidating for most humans. And I think there's going to be more goal setting work coming up in a future evening with the expert. But really, from the start, when you think of goals, it does not have to be this formal, scary process. When families enroll, there's paperwork typically, right? And including a questionnaire about their hopes and dreams and some background information about that child is critical. And I believe there's an email going out with a family engagement tool that you can incorporate on page 90 or page 29 on that. But with that, if a family writes down that their hopes and dreams is that their child is going to become a basketball player, right? It's this really amazing accountability that you can go back to this to frame hard count conversations and just to help inform your own practice with that child's learning. That so if that family's hopes and dream is like she's going to be a basketball player, it's going to happen. If you notice maybe some delays in gross motor development, or maybe she's tripping a lot, maybe there's some low muscle tone things that you're seeing that are just kind of maybe a red flag to you, then that's an opportunity to go back to that hope and dream and that parent's wish and expertise on them and say, hey, I've noticed this thing here. And well, I think that, let's have a deeper conversation about it. I also think about, or when we think about partnerships and doing things with families and shared power, Rose mentioned potty training earlier, and we have to co-create things like that, right? Like it would be probably very challenging if you were the only one that was potty training the child in that program, and if it wasn't happening at home. And so that's one of the strongest examples I can think of why we need to do it together. It just wouldn't be as effective. Whereas if both environments are working on it, then that child will be more successful. If you're lucky enough to work under a program that has a board or advisory committee, it's best practice if families are involved in that. And it can be really tricky to get those families involved just by virtues of time and limited resources. But don't be afraid to ask them. If you see a parent that seems to have a lot of woo or sway, or even if they're really quiet, like sometimes those are the most powerful people, and they just need to be asked. And the last principle here is asking them how they want to participate. Ashleigh covered a lot of the topics in systems work. And that's a real true thing that at the end of the day, not every parent can participate in the same way. And that can be a really good, beautiful thing also. So we have to examine our lens also when we're thinking about that of if we'd like them to participate more. You know, my mother was a PTA mom, and so I got to be a stay-at-home child for like the first 5 to 7 years of my life. And there was a time where I had to reframe that involvement looks really different for myself also as a solo parent. There was a stretch there when I had a preschool and those first couple years are really hard where I couldn't walk my child to school. And to me, that was like what involvement looked like. And that it just does look different for every parent, and that some parents are not going to, at the end of the day, like some parents actually don't want to participate also, and it doesn't mean they're not involved. It's going back to that communication and being adaptable and engaging them in whatever way you can.
Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. There was a study done in Canada where the average amount of time that a caregiver spends in a childcare facility over the course of a week is less than 3 minutes. So if you think about that, that's the amount of time you have with the average family to make some of those communication and find out their preferences. That's not a lot of time. So we have to be intentional. Okay, we're gonna pop over to point number 5 from Ashleigh. I apologize, I forgot to turn that on at the beginning. So, okay, popping over to Ashleigh.
Real quick, mic check. Rose, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm having some technical issues with my earphones, so just want to make sure that you guys can still hear me. It has not been a week and it has already been a week and it's only Monday. So yeah, so the next principle that we're going to talk about is that communication is what builds connection. And shameless plug here, I was a speech and debate geek all through high school and all through college. So communication is a topic that has always been very near and dear to my heart, because it's what leads to collaboration and figuring out issues and problem solving and coming up with resolutions that meet everyone's needs, right? Um, but the fact is that collaboration goes so much further beyond the monthly newsletters and family engagement events. It's really about building a sense of relationship through mutual respect, that openness, and a sense of shared purpose. And it's not just a one and done, right? It's ongoing and it has to be reciprocal and ultimately grounded in empathy and understanding, like we had just talked about. So, a couple things to keep in mind with how you build effective collaborations through connection is that collaborate or communication should always be relational, not transactional. What that means is that your communication focuses on building meaningful connections and not just the tasks or outcomes. So, for example, your goal is to build a partnership, right? Not just complete a task like sending a message that an incident was filed or sending the parent a picture of what their child is doing throughout the day. It extends beyond that. Not to invalidate those other steps, because of course those are essential for building that relationship as well. It just goes a step further beyond that. It also, when communication is more relational, it prioritizes this understanding over efficiency. So collaboration ultimately requires an understanding of all perspectives, not just the right or wrong perspective. And it's not just about relaying information. And at the end of the day, communication that is relational encourages ongoing dialogue versus just the outcomes. Again, it doesn't stop once a task or once a check mark is completed, once papers turned in, or once the child is dropped off or picked up. That communication continues to grow and develop, and interactions continue to take place. So then next we have trust and respect is what creates supportive environments. Ultimately, it's easy to understand that people are much more likely to share their thoughts and feelings and work together in spaces where they feel seen and heard. Even think about you and your own interactions with family members, with friends, with colleagues. Are you more likely to disclose personal or challenging information or vent to a colleague that you don't really have interactions on a daily basis with, or somebody that you see frequently day in, day out and you get along with? So when a parent feels heard and understood, then they're more likely to engage in that two-way relationship building. Again, this is where we see that the concept that we need to do a better job ultimately of listening to understand, not just respond. Really listening with that empathy and compassion to understand how this family or this person is being affected by whatever it might be, even if you don't necessarily or wouldn't respond in the same manner, right? For some people, not getting a decent night's sleep is no big deal, where for others, myself included, it is crippling, right? So understanding that can help us be better partners in this collaborative relationship. Then ultimately, when we create a sense of trust and safety through using kind, non-judgmental language and following through on promises or tasks that we say that we're going to do, and acknowledging that family's efforts even, we're more likely to build a sense of trust and respect. Then finally, kind of drawing back to the first concept that we talked about, connection is critical to child development again. So collaboration isn't just about the adults having reciprocal, positive and productive relationships. It's also about what we as adults within that child's network are modeling and what they're observing based on our interactions. Adult partnerships is what really teaches children how to form their own relationships. So think of kids that grow up in really unstable households, or have witnessed domestic violence between their parents, right? Think of how those children talk to their peers and even teachers and educators and other adults. Oftentimes it's not super respectful. They might be a little bit more violent, or you might see more challenging behaviors with those kids. That's because that's what they've learned. That's their way of life and what they've observed. So when children see teachers and families communicating kindly and respecting each other's perspectives, as well as working together to solve problems, the children internalize what a healthy relationship and what collaboration and teamwork truly looks like and should look like. Again, through these modeled interactions, children really begin to understand how to express their feelings and needs respectfully, how to listen and take turns in communication, how to trust and seek support from their peers or from the adults in their life, as well as how to cooperate in a way that leads to shared success. So at the end of the day, our adult partnerships are again what teach children how to build their own effective relationships. And every time a teacher and a parent work together positively around that child experiences a sense of security and belonging, which are key foundations for their learning, not only academically, but for them to really excel social emotionally as well. So again, it's really important to prioritize these connections in your collaboration with families and with children because we're not just supporting the adults, but we're shaping the way that children express their own needs and communicate and build that sense of community.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Back over to Megan for number 6.
Okay, for number 6, this one I'm going to invite you. You can either come off of mute or you can put it in the chat. But relationships being built through everyday moments. So I want to invite you to think about people or a person that you're close with, maybe your work bestie or your spouse. And what are some things that you do together? Maybe not your spouse for this question then, but for your your friends, maybe you've got a group chat. What are some things that you do that you know this person is your ride or die or your good friend or
I think something hilarious, which I'll just maybe break the ice, is those people I think we feel close enough to, at least for me, I have multiple avenues of communication with them. Like I'm sharing a reel on Instagram. We have text messages going. We also have videos that I've tagged them in on Facebook. Like tracking all these different communication methods. So that's one thing for me, I guess I'll speak to.
that's a good example. You've got your Instagram like thing that you have to keep up with and the text thread. I know with some of my friends, I've got some inside jokes that we have. We're excited to see each other. We're intentional about it. It's those little everyday moments, just like we couldn't do a math problem once and master it, right? We have to practice it. Relationships are built through small everyday moments. So next slide.
And in the chat, we had Aaron share go places together, just hang out.
I really empathize with Erin's comment too, because so my family traditionally every year we go on like a family vacation somewhere. And there are certain members of my family that I would absolutely dread going on a vacation with. So you can even see that within your own like social network of people that you're related to.
Definitely. And yes, and there's probably kids in your environments that maybe you wouldn't want to spend extended time with that you have to dig deep for but yeah, play games together, you do something and you get excited to tell each other about it. We feel like we're on the same page whenever you're talking, so you have like a shared common ground, you just get each other. That's exact, like those are those small everyday moments, and we can take that same concept and apply that to our environments, do church activities together. So you're doing life together, right? I'm sure you've heard this, but that importance of greeting people by name, a smile, even if you have to fake it, putting the big smile on your face that they came, sharing those brief stories, that goes above and beyond having one, like we love a good mommies and muffins, dads and donuts, right? But above and beyond that goes tenfold for the way you're able to build trust with families. If you know, and think about for yourself too, like you can tell when somebody's excited to see you, and families and children are the same way. That showing curiosity about children's lives outside of school, that's where you're really going to get the data too about what's really going on in their families, the kinds of things they care about. Just being, again, asking people, it speaks volumes for building relationships. The strongest relationships grow from small, consistent gestures and lack of judgment, and connection doesn't need to be complicated. Rose said something earlier about 55%, pretty good, right? Kind of the same, like we don't need to be perfect at this every single day, because you are doing a lot of hours with these children and with these families also, right? Like I imagine there's grace back and forth a little bit. Like we don't have to show up perfect every single day. Our families aren't showing up perfect, and we know children aren't either. And that trust in those small interactions and building that trust long term, that's also part of the people that we care about, right? They give us those grace, and we know that, hey, it's a rough day, but tomorrow's going to be a different day. Um, Story time again with a kid in my program on a way this can work too. Just present, I had a little girl where her family did go through a divorce, and it was an ugly divorce. I mean, there was one moment, kind of jokingly, where I was like, I feel like I might be the best option for custody in this, but it was really brutal. And we'd had a long relationship of building up until this, but there were days where they would come in and she was just shaking with stress, right? And it just was like, you're good, I've got her. Like, you can go. Or there would be times where dad would be dropping off and it was like ballet recital practice. And he's like, I have no idea what to do here, right? And it's those everyday, like true home to school moments or home to learning environment moments of like, I've got her, like, let me just do her hair, right? Like it's doing life. And you have this going back to, I think, point number one or two about the power of influence together. You get to do life with these people in some ways. Like they are never going to forget you and that impact and that influence that you had on that child's life. And we got story after story of keeping in touch with our families and seeing them graduate. I know in South Dakota people are now doing childcare for like the kids of people that they had in their childcare. And so that it's those small little moments. And we've talked a lot about empathy, family stress. So I won't go over that again, but it's hard to be a provider right now. It's hard to be a parent right now. It's just hard to be human. So um, dig deep and tap into it. And that positive communication too, that text message, I'm thinking of you, or this happened today. I have like I said, a 16-year-old. I have never forgotten the teachers and the providers that have gone out of their way to text something wonderful or send a quick email about, hey, this happened today and it was really awesome, or he's got this talent. So those are happy hormone boosters that go a long way. Over to you, Rose.
I love that plug. I agree. I can remember every teacher, they've said those positive things. So, okay, over to Ashleigh for point number 7.
Okay, so next let's talk about how cultural responsiveness strengthens relationships and really promotes family engagement. So cultural responsiveness at its core means not only seeing and understanding, but recognizing, respecting, and responding to the diverse backgrounds, values, and experiences of all of your children and families that are served. So what this looks like is seeing cultures as a strength, not as a difference to overcome, especially when you're interacting with dual language learners or maybe English as a second language children. It's a bit of a step outside of our comfort zone, but the more effort that we make on our end is what truly establishes that connection and that sense of respect. Because it's not just about showing up for these families, it's about adapting our communications and environment and teaching practices to honor each family's individual identity. When we do this and we honor families, and we honor who families are and what they bring to the classroom, we build a stronger partnership that helps support their child's learning and overall that whole child well-being. So how do we become more culturally responsive? What does that look like? First and foremost, it's recognizing that relationships are not a one-size-fits-all model. Just like with children, families need individualized support. What works for one family may not work for another. Me, myself, just as an example, I scream and I turn the other way if somebody calls me. Like, do not pick up the phone and dial my number. Please just send me a text or a message, and I will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days at least. No, but in all seriousness, like acknowledging what even just style of communication a family prefers recognizes where they show up and how they're able to show up. It also looks like taking the time to truly connect with each family, learning just a little bit about them and what their goals are for their child, as well as their preferences and priorities. It really goes to show a lot when an educator or a teacher or even the pediatrician recognizes that, hey, your child was sick last week. How are they doing today? Are you guys feeling better? Are they still really struggling? I've been thinking about them. Small, simple acts, even like that, can help really build that relationship. And then involving families in that goal setting process. You know, in maybe in class, the teacher's goal is that this child is able to know all of the letters of the alphabet and all of the sounds of the alphabet. Where at home, maybe the family's priority, mine included, is that my kids aren't fighting every hour of the day, right? That looks different between home and school. So being on the same page of what goals are truly to be prioritized for that child can help families feel heard and respected and valued in the process of their child's development and academic journey. And then with that is adaptability. So not being afraid to ask yourself, how can I fit my approach to meet the needs of each individual family? Maybe this family needs a little bit more reassurance and positive affirmations than maybe this family over here. Or again, that communication method is really a good example because maybe the family only has Wi-Fi calling and can only receive calls when they're, at home or somewhere that has free Wi-Fi. So calling may not always be an option, but sending them a quick text for when they're able to receive it can lead to more effective communication. Then, with that second point, we have celebrating family differences really creates a unique opportunity for family involvement. This is really done through representation through the classroom. So whether that's, having different books or materials, posters, even dolls with different clothing from different cultures around the world, having materials that represent the families that you serve helps build a sense of belonging and involvement in the classroom dynamic. You could also invite different families in to share about their culture and traditions in the classroom to create this unique opportunity for authentic engagement and appreciation. It goes beyond just having a single cultural day in the classroom. It's consistently inviting those families with different backgrounds and cultures to take part in the classroom environment and educating their peers on, the beauty of diversity and, different cultures again. And then lastly, we have being inclusive to all families. So inclusion means that every family feels seen, valued, and supported, regardless of their language, regardless of their race, their income, or their upbringing and their background. So how can you do this? Number one, and I feel is one of the most important, is being poverty informed. That's recognizing that limited time, resources, or access do not always translate to a lack of interest in their child's development and academics. Understanding at its core what kind of barriers family and poverty might face can help better build that empathy and understanding for those families that really do struggle with housing insecurities and food insecurities, transportation issues, long work schedules just to be able to make ends meet and afford food at the end of the day. Next, I would strongly encourage everybody to be trauma informed. So, a little bit different than being poverty informed, although oftentimes poverty and trauma go hand in hand. Trauma informed is being more understanding about how past experiences can shape a family and even a child's engagement and interactions. Again, take that example of the child that may have witnessed domestic violence in the home growing up. Understanding what domestic violence does to a child's development and how it impacts their behaviors and even the parents' relationships with you can help you better navigate what ways that child or that family needs supported. Maybe again, the family or the parent might need a little bit more reassurance or a little bit more gentle tones um, and acknowledging how what you're saying might be received. That's what being trauma informed means. And then lastly, it's important to remove your personal social biases and always assume positive intent. A parent may not always be able to attend events because they lack transportation, not because they don't want to be involved. So keeping that in the back of your mind and avoiding assumptions and preconceived notions that, this family never shows up, so we're just here to take care of their kid. That's not always the case. So when you can remove yourself and um, make it less about the personal attack of why this family doesn't want to be involved with their child and understand that it likely more stems from a place of their capacity, then we're able to build that bridge a little bit better. Lastly, remember at the end of the day, cultural responsiveness is not a checklist of items. It's something that you can just, whip out your paper of. Do you have three culturally represented posters in the classroom? Do you have baby dolls of different ethnicities and races? And do you sing Feliz Navidad as well as Merry Christmas at Christmas time, right? It's a constant mindset that requires practice, and genuine interest and involvement.
Love that. I'm going to drop in the chat a resource that Ashleigh recommends if you want to dive deeper into this concept. It will also get shared again on that wrap-up email, but it's there for you to peruse as well. And then while I'm navigating over to Megan, I just wanted to share a quick story of when I was teaching. Um, Ashleigh touched on making it intentional and relevant to the families. We would always do obviously Christmas themed things in December, right? That is kind of the area we live in. And I had a family who was not religious but celebrated winter solstice. And they asked if they could come in and speak about what the solstice is. And this created such a beautiful opportunity to not only have real family engagement, like they came in, they talked about their beliefs, but then it became a science lesson, right? Like, think of all the beautiful things we got to talk about then. What is winter solstice? What does this mean? Like, what are they celebrating? So keep an open mind and asking those questions, and beautiful things will come. Okay, over to Megan for point number 8.
I get attacked with the A word, advocacy, which I feel like I've been very afraid of that word for most of my probably adult and childhood life. But advocacy actually it's not just people in business suits in fancy buildings. Advocacy is something, it's really just systems to support relationships. And I Reggio Emilia is an early childhood concept. And according to Reggio Emilia, there's, of course, the policy type of advocacy, but then there's two other kinds. It's making children's learning visible, and it's supporting the rights and ideas of children and educators. And so we can do advocacy, but it's really just talking about things we care about and educating others about why they should care about it also. And so thinking about making children's learning visible, there are, we could take pictures, Polaroids. We can send pictures. You can go to the next slide. There's communication. Oh, I forgot about this one. Sorry. You can go to the next slide. Okay, we'll go back one. Sorry.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay. This one, I think I had wanted to talk about this one because of advocacy, because it is so scary. And just thinking of things from when I hear even the word systems, this iron triangle dives deep into systems, is my understanding. And this is just like the child care part of it, right? Like the business side of it. And then we think of families too, and the systems in their lives, the having to work multiple jobs to make ends meet, to, getting children to their doctors, and it might take a couple days. So there's a lot of systems behind our world and their world, and merging it all to provide great care for children. That can be really complicated. And so all that to say with advocacy, now you can go to the next slide, is that we can do some things that are a little bit simpler for advocacy too, with that making learning visible, send like sending the pictures, using the communication apps, hanging whatever they create. There's likely a place where they walk in and or families drop off and pick up. That's a great place to hang pictures, and a great place to encourage language then too. If kids' pictures are there, and if the kids get to be involved in that process of hanging them, and or their infants, as you if you get ready to, that's such a fun conversation piece to engage parents, and help them feel welcome in that environment. Um, there's a mindset that if you can do joint professional development together, that's one way to bring families and providers together and educators closer together. Um, and the other, and advocate, but like, sorry, okay. For advocacy also, and time and space, and talking about things you care about for other people. I mean, it can be going to your boss or going to your staff and saying, we need to make time for this. Like this week, I want you, this person's staff, to be taking pictures of the kids. And let's write up one sentence, and maybe we can share it if you've got like a social media page for your families, or if you have a platform, or you can just print the pictures off and show them. That's a great small thing you can do to start doing some family engagement efforts in your environments. Um, and the other piece with advocacy that I wanted to talk about, um, is that the translation and communication tools, like thinking of those things we've talked about with families, and that, like Rose said, there's multiple ways to you communicate via the Instagram reels, via the group text, via the Facebook Messenger. It's almost the same with families, in that advocacy piece of finding ways in that time, in that space, to connect for it. And the last little story I wanted to tell you about like true advocacy too. Um, People don't know that there's not money in childcare, and people don't know, like, to them, they're paying anywhere from what, $500 to $1,000 a month, depending on where you live, and they don't understand it. I just had a physical therapist appointment this week, and she had no idea. And for her, in her mind, um, as a physical therapist, people pay her, and that's a service, and she provides it. And in her mind, when she sends her 2-year-old to childcare, like the childcare should be the one that is doing the socialization in those pieces, that in her mind it's a service. And so, that's an opportunity to engage with people where you're going to say, actually, it's really different. And actually, people aren't making any money in childcare. And so that's one of the, stay humble with that platform a little bit too. But people really don't have any idea. I think people are still thinking it's a huge moneymaker, and we know that it's not, that we are not saving, but we're nurturing the next generation, and kind of not always doing the best with that, as far as financially. But those are my advocacy tips for you, and just go back to empowering parents as their child's first influence.
I love that you brought up the three pillars under Regio. I had completely forgotten about that, Megan, and I think it breaks down that scariness of advocacy, like you said. Like, I think we're all like, oh, we can't do that. That's not in our wheelhouse. But when you phrase it of You're an advocate every time you talk competently to why you are teaching children this concept or explaining the importance of social emotional readiness for kindergarten. Like that's advocating for true quality care for these children. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Okay, those were our 8 principles. Um, we always end with a couple of the same type of slides. This one is called Next Steps. So, what are your next steps if you want to learn more? What can you do beyond this? Here are a couple of really great resources. And the first one is Megan's parent organization, and they put together a lot of really good resources. They have trainings. I don't know, Megan, you can give a little your elevator spiel if you'd like to.
Absolutely. So, that's the Family Engagement Center. Our mission is just we've created so many resources, free trainings, um, around family engagement, a lot of early literacy trainings also. We can drop the link in the chat, but we've got some learning opportunities coming up. There's like a STEAM camp for kids also during the holiday break if you're in the Rapid City area. So, you can share that with your out of school time, kiddos. And let's see, I have a slide about that. Oh, the Poverty Escape Room. They are statewide in different communities now, but that's a great example of a place to go and attend to understand the barriers. And if you want to learn more about family engagement and some deeper tried and true practices, we've got some family engagement courses that you can take too that are typically self-paced.
Awesome. Love it. And Megan's right. I will share the link here in just a second. And then the other half is Ashleigh and I's parent company, if you will. We're a part of the early childhood enrichment system, and I'm going to drop in the chat our resource hub, which is going to take you to if you need some of those, like Megan had talked about the great front end you can do on like asking parents the all about me and my family at the beginning. So if you don't have time to have those conversations, so you can find all sorts of like printable resources and links on that site. And we will drop Megan's link here too. I think that's the correct one. Professional growth. These are some that I mention every time. Our Pathways program through ECE just celebrates your individual growth and success through early childhood. You get fun little prizes like books, headphones, things like that, a certificate of completion. So if you want to log into that, or if you have questions, you can reach out. If you do not have your CDA, please reach out to any of us at ECC and we will help guide you. But again, I think that circles back to that last point Megan had is if you can advocate, if you can speak to child development, you're doing a greater service to these families, these children. And then the last one there is SEDACY, so our local chapter of National Association for the Education of Young Children, big mouthful. If you're unaware of what we do, you can ask Megan or I. I'm the chapter rep and she is now the Black Hills member at large. We would love to talk to you about what you gain, what type of connections, and all the things that we do. We do have our conference this year in Rapid City. So it rotates around the state. It is April 9th and 10th, and it'll be really great. It's a really good time to come together with other teachers, not feel like you're on your island, and get some great training too. So moving on to our pre-submitted questions, we're going to let the experts take it from here. I will read the first one. How can I move from simply informing families about what's happening in the classroom to truly engaging them as partners in their child's learning?
I can build off of those photos to make their learning visible or sending out a photo. Asking them questions too, or at pickup, like, what do you notice about their artwork, or what do you notice about how they came and greeted you? Engaging them is a great way for them to go deeper in their thinking too and articulate it.
I think that's a really great point too of getting the whole picture and not just the one side and reporting that to the family. Asking those questions to engage or to get a deeper level of understanding of what might be going on in the classroom. And also again that shared goal building, right? Engaging with families on what their priorities for their child is and how you can build on those in the classroom as well. So yeah, really just getting the whole picture and collaborating on mutual shared goals.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, question two. What strategies help build authentic relationships with families who may be hesitant to engage or whose experiences with schools haven't always been positive?
I think we talked a bit about that too within the talk of the barriers of that families are coming in with baggage, thinking, I'm not the expert, and they've had horrible experiences, or they've bounced from childcare setting to childcare setting if their child has behaviors, especially. So, I mean, those focusing on their strengths is those small moments of connection every day and staying committed to the partnership piece of it and communicating even when it's hard. It sounds really good never to have hard conversations about what's going on, but usually that blows up in our faces. So keep the communication open.
Yeah, and kind of expanding on that idea too, especially if you're working with parents or family members where school hasn't always been a positive interaction. That's probably because the only times that the parent was reached out to or really talked to is when the child was an issue or there was a concern to be addressed, right? So when you have a family that is new to you and regardless if you know that there was pre-existing history at maybe another center or the child got kicked out for whatever reason, whatever baggage does exist. I think this is where it's really important to be intentional about those small steps of building relationships, the asking how your day is, the asking little specifics to gain interest about the family, like what are your weekend plans, or what kinds of things does your child like to do? What are their interests? And really following through on that representation in the classroom. So that way you build that positive relationship and interaction with that family before you need to address the issues or concerns. Because when you have that positive relationship to begin with, then when you bring an issue or concern to the parent or the family member, it's going to feel less daunting and less attacking and less singling out to the family, and it's going to feel more of this, there's this mutual interest in my child. It comes from a genuine place of concern and interest in their growth and development. So yeah, again, I would say really just being intentional from the beginning about making every interaction as positive as possible. With that, you hear the phrase 5 positives to counteract 1 negative, really standing by that and using that as a gauge on how and when you're communicating with a family.
Love that. And I have a story to go off of Ashleigh's last bit there about being intentional with those questions you're asking and actually wanting to hear and understand them. I had a single mom who I think either Ashleigh or Megan or you both touched on how that can be taxing in itself and stressful. She was young and she didn't feel that she had anything to offer in the terms of what she could do for engagement. Like we had doctor dads who came in with skeletons and talked, and we had yoga instructors who came in and did lessons. So she stayed in the shadows, right? She didn't feel like she had anything. However, in one of those conversations, what are you doing this weekend? It came about that she played electric violin. And so, what better way than to have her come in and play that instrument? And now it is intentional. She feels valued. Their home life, what her and her daughter are doing, is a part of the classroom. And she feels like a valued partner and that her voice is heard too. So, keep asking those questions and listening in the hope of gaining an understanding and collaborating with those families. So, to wrap up tonight, parent involvement is more of a doing to, while engagement is a doing with. And I think Megan talked on that earlier, that that is like the foundation. So, I just want to thank you for spending your evening here with us. It's really the heart of what we talked about is shifting from involving families to partnering with them. Collaboration isn't those updates, newsletters, and quick check-ins. It's about listening. It's about sharing decisions and recognizing and valuing that families are also experts on their children. So when we do with them, we build that trust. We build belonging. We build bridges strong enough to hold everyone who cares for that child. So tonight you got to reflect on what authentic engagement looks like, how we can honor each family, their story, their culture, their voice. And you heard how simple changes from inviting input and sharing power and celebrating family strengths can just transform the relationships and the outcomes for children in your classroom, your facility, and your community. So as you head back, I hope you remember that collaboration isn't just that one extra checkbox that you have to do. It is the work. It is when families and educators walk together and children feel it. They feel secure, confident, and connected because the adults in their world are moving in the same direction. So thank you for all you guys do. Like I said, the hardest work imaginable. You are helping to change humans, grow and foster these little beautiful humans and little souls. So I appreciate you. And we're not just engaging families, we're building that foundation of our community. I'm going to turn it over for some, if you have wrap up questions, feel free to hop off of mute or drop them in the chat. But I'm also going to turn it over for some closing remarks from Ashleigh and Megan. Whichever one would like to go first.
Sure. Yeah, I can stay on to answer questions also. I just go back to like the parents as the influence. They really like not everybody has realized that or understands the power of that, or that them looking at a phone every single day means their child is. And so empowering them and giving them that language can be a game changer.
And I'm probably going to sound like a broken record with this, but it is something I am hugely and deeply passionate about. But recognizing that a lot of families in our community, and even nationally, don't come from supportive family dynamics where they have, parents, grandparents, active aunts and uncles, and good friends that are involved with their children's lives. So the educators not only just take on the role as an educator, but you really are a critical piece of their positive support network. And just remembering again that when a family isn't engaged or appears to not be interested in their child's academics and social emotional skills and progress, it's not because they don't want to be involved. There's likely something deeper going on that requires compassion and empathy to help navigate. We really are the supporters on the sidelines, giving them, that extra hand to navigate the challenging life as a parent, bringing up the next generation. So doing what you can to keep that positive perspective, and knowing that everyone's intent is positive is really important.
Thank you both, ladies. Beautiful last words. I have the evaluation QR link up there. The Zoom link is also dropped in the chat. Please head over and fill out the evaluation. There is no pre or post like there normally is for ECC trainings. It's just the evaluation, and that's how we go off of to make sure you guys get credit for those ever important training hours, right? It's getting close to the new year, so DSS is going to be looking for them. So go ahead and do that. While you guys are filling out the evaluation, I'm going to play a video that I like to share in a training I do call about parent engagement strategies. So I'm going to play that video while you guys are filling out the evaluation. I did skip over sharing ECC's website, but I will drop that in the chat as well. Just so you know, all of our trainings this whole month have been about different, deeper ways that you guys can engage families and young children's adults. So as soon as you finish your evaluation, you guys are free to go, and just know that we all appreciate all the work you guys do every day. And head over to the video.
Educators, authorities, and experts claim that our public education system is in the midst of a crisis. While they don't often agree on the solution, their prescriptions have one common ingredient: family engagement.
And so the question is whether all of us, as citizens and as parents, are willing to do what's necessary to give every child a chance to succeed. That responsibility begins not in our classrooms, but in our homes.
A very important part of the educational process is to involve the parents.
To really involve parents and the entire community in ensuring that public education improves.
If we can have parental involvement, that's huge and terrific.
It is well documented and plain common sense that parental involvement in a child's education boosts student learning and improves both behavior and student attendance.
Unfortunately, there are still studies coming out that show that many parents feel that the total responsibility for the education of their students is the schools and the teacher. And that's not true.
There are no excuses. Because when you are in the building, boys see a good example, girls see a good example, and children will change their behavior just because they know you.
When I walk into a school where the parent volunteers, the community partners, I can just feel the difference in the building.
Our highest achieving kids always have parental support. What does that tell us? We've got to get parental support for more of our kids.
You've got to let your kid know you're invested. So when they come home, ask them, can I see your homework? Ask them, what did they do in school?
So that piece, that collaboration piece that I talked about before, more and more and more, I see that as the most important factor of helping kids learn.
Schools can't do it all by themselves, okay? And if we don't find a ways to engage parents, then we're not going to get it done.
My mom showed up in my school, scared me to death. She would look the teacher in the eye and say, my child will get an A in this class. It's either going to be your fault or his fault. If it's his fault, I'll take care of him at home. But if it's your fault, I'm coming back here.
I'm telling you, if everybody who is a parent who is listening right now went to your school and said to the teacher, tell me what I can do to help you help my child, even if you would get a different level of respect,
yes,
and you would get a different level of return for your child. Would you not?
Look, everybody
Thank
knows
you for that.
the kids whose parents show up, you can't help it by human nature. You pay particular attention to those children.
I'm not going to deny it's difficult because all the factors that we've been talking about all weekend play into that. The employment issues, let's just take one of them, and the stress of lower income families and just trying to exist make it difficult, obviously, to get involved. Right. But I think we have to start from the belief, a real belief, that family engagement is not external to the process of education.
In the end, there is no program or policy that can substitute for a parent, for a mother or father who will attend those parent-teacher conferences, or help with homework, or turn off the TV, put away the video games, read to their child. I speak to you not just as a president, but as a father. When I say that responsibility for our children's education must begin at home. That is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. That's an American issue.
Okay, Catherine, do you need the link reshared, Catherine? Is that what you're asking? Let me drop it there again. All right. Like I said, once you guys finish the evaluation, you are free to go for your evening. You guys should see your training certificates emailed to you or your director, usually within about a week, but I will say our poor Joe has been really sick lately. So please give him some grace as he navigates catching up on his ever-growing pile of to-do list. All right. Save. And Megan and Ashleigh, you guys are free to go whenever. I really appreciate both of you speaking from your hearts and all of your expertise that you brought tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.